Autumn Nation Series, folks. The French are hosting the Wallabies this weekend. We're going to go through some lineups, some predictions, stats, and you guys can let us know your thoughts on how this game may be going to go. Pretty tight history between these two sides, with the Wallabies actually edging the last 5, 3-2. Remember, the French toured Australia last year, albeit with not perhaps their full strength squad. So, we'll go through this squad and, as I said, you guys can let us know your thoughts. If you want to watch these games, all the autumn games, including Australia, France, and you're in the States, check out Flow Rugby, link in the description. They've got a lot of rugby on because it's going to be a very, very busy November. The French, as I mentioned, didn't take a lot of their big guns down to Australia in 2021. It still pushed the Wallabies really close. It was a really, really tight series. But now we get to have a look at some of the kind of bigger names in the French squad. I mean, the French squad's got depth. Even the French squad without the likes of an Ntamack and a Dupont and Marchand and all these guys is still pretty classy. But, the biggest guns are certainly back. Baille, Marchand, and Atonio is a new front row from the team which toured Japan back in the middle of the year. And I think along with the Springboks and the Irish, that's one of the better looking front rows in World Rugby. The Wallabies are certainly going to need to front up at scrum time because there's some big bodies in that French pack. Woki is also there alongside Flament. Woki is back in business after, I don't think he travelled to Japan from memory. Certainly one of the classier liner operators in French rugby. Flament, maybe not quite as big as the likes of Paul Willemse, but certainly will add some ball handling skills to the second row as well, alongside Woki. It's a very athletic looking second row. Willemse is one of the guys who's unavailable. I think he's got a thigh injury. The back row is Jelonch, Ollivon, and Alldritt. Ollivon was kind of out of the squad for quite some time with injury, but then he went to Japan and he didn't look like he'd been out of the international game for any length of time. He was proper class, getting through a lot of work, but then Alldritt, just in terms of the amount of carries that guy makes, he's going to give his Australian counterpart a run for his money. Like, both these sides have picked number 8s who just love to carry all day long. So that's going to be a fascinating matchup in itself. And Jelonch is kind of that guy who's a bit of a master of all trades, jack of all trades, master of none. He's pretty good at everything, Jelonch. I wouldn't classify him as kind of any one particular strength. He can jackal, he can tackle, he can carry, he gets out wide, sometimes he can pass. So yeah, he keeps getting picked for a reason. Dupont is there at 9 and he is captain. Probably, if not the best, one of the best players in the world. So it's always a pleasure when you get to watch that guy operating. He's alongside regular counterpart Romain and Ntamack, but he's not had any game time as far as I'm aware. I think this is his first game, is it, of the season? Or has he played a couple of games for Toulouse? Either way, he's been out for a long time. So he's going to have to hit the ground running. We'll see if there's any rust on Ntamack, but generally those classy guys tend to be able to just pick up where they left off. Danty and Fickou is an interesting midfield because Danty, just with that pure size, is going to make your life miserable. And then Fickou, he understands the game better than most, I think. He's always the right place at the right time. So, very talented French squad. Moefana shifts to the wing. Penaud is in the right wing. He seems to be one of the few consistent members of the squad who generally has a lock. And then Ramos is there at fullback. Jaminet is one of the guys who was out, I think, with an ankle injury. So I don't think we've seen Ramos start at 15 for a wee while for France. If he's in the squad, he's usually 23. So, it's a pretty impressive looking French squad. They're Grand Slam champions for a reason. Mauvaka, Priso, and Flament are the front row replacements. Also pretty tidy. Fainga'a is a big body to bring off the bench. Girassi and Makalou are the other forward replacements, which means it's just the two backs on the bench. Although I say that, and Makalou has been known to come off the bench and slot in on the wing, even though he is a loose forward by trade. Luku is the guy who kind of ran the show over in Japan. He's relegated to that more familiar 22 jersey, and then Jalibert is there at 23. So, yeah, I guess it's a good thing about the French squad. They have got some pretty versatile operators who can shift positions like Moefana, Fickou, Penaud and whatnot. Ntamack too. So, yeah, I'm sure wherever they move them around, they will add some value. For the Australians, remember they did play last week. They got a 1-point victory over the Scots. They've made a few changes from that squad, but it's by no means wholesale changes. It's tinkering, if anything else. Slipper, Poreki, and Tupou are the front row. So Tupou comes up from the bench. He's a big man to be starting up against, a pretty tight French front row, like I mentioned. He'll be looking to get some gains in the loose as well as compete at scrum time, because it's part of the reason you play Taniela Tupou. He is, in the loose, he can just create havoc, but he's got a knack of giving away a few too many penalties, and the Wallabies in general penalty count is pretty high. Frost and Neville, certainly not the most experienced second row in World Rugby, but neither is the French one, and both those guys acquitted themselves really well last week. Holloway, Hooper, and Valtini is the same back row, so Holloway, being that kind of lock-loose forward, adds that bit of extra liner option. Hooper with his tackling, and then Rob Valtini with his tackles. Carries, like I mentioned, him and Alldritt both love a carry. Valtini's been having a career best season this year, so I look forward to see him carrying the ball into that rather stingy and hard to break down French defence. Nick White, Bernard Foley's 9-10, so White up from the bench this week. We could probably expect to see him kicking a wee bit from 9. And Foley was the Iceman, lived up to his reputation last week with his kicking from the boot. He kicked all his goals, and when it's a 1-point game, that's kind of pretty crucial. Foketi comes into the squad this week at 12 alongside Ikita, which means Hunter Paisami drops to the bench. You maybe lose a slight bit of physical edge because Paisami loves a big direct carry, but Foketi's main job will be to try and keep Danty quiet. Callaway and Tom Wright are the wings, same as last week, and then Jock Campbell gets a run at fullback after only making his debut last week. It's straight into the fire, but that's only because I think Tom Banks has got an ankle injury. Remember also Alatoa has got some concussion, which is part of the reason Tupou gets promoted to the starting lineup. Bench-wise, Fainga'a, Gibbon and Robertson are the front row replacements. Big Will Skelton, speaking of big humans, he's there in the number 19 jersey. He needs to come on and just go fire and brimstone, chuck that big body of his around. Pete Samu is the kind of all-rounder in the number 20 jersey, and then 3 back replacements with Jake Gordon, Hunter Paisami and Reece Hodge. So no spot for Tate McDermott this week, which is a bit disappointing because he was just, I thought, really sharp last week. Stats-wise, the Aussies have got the worst ruck completion rate of all the Tier 1 teams this year. That includes Italy, so certainly too soft at the breakdown. It's an area they'll need to improve. And France, I mentioned their defence is stingy. Yes, they give away fewer than 3 clean breaks a game. They're a very, very hard team to break down. The odds, on the other hand, 5.3. So, France, very, very hard to break down. Aussies, not so much. Only the Italy defence allows more clean breaks than Australia. So, very much on the flip side from each other. However, I don't mean to be all doom and gloom. Australia are one of the top teams for turnovers won. So, they can pinch your ball. Trouble is they're a bit good at giving it away as well and protecting their own ball. However, I should say, however, guess who's got a higher amount of turnovers won than Australia? On average, it's France. But that being said, France are a team happy to play without the ball. They regularly play like 40-odd% possession because they back their defence and they back their ability to kind of hit you on the break. So, very, very interesting between these two sides. I mentioned the recent history is slightly in Australia's favour. Average score across their last 5 games, France 26, Australia 27. So generally not much in it, but with these results we're looking back, a couple of them are 2016 and 2014, so maybe not that relevant. And then, as I mentioned, the France squad that toured 2021, missing a few names. This is going to be a big test of where the Wallabies are at. They jumped 3 world rankings positions with their away win at Scotland. France at home. It's going to be certainly another story. They're big-time underdogs, the Wallabies. The bookies have got France by 13. Rugby forecast algorithms got France by 13, so predicted to kind of romp home at the Stade de France. Late kickoff, which is kind of to be expected in France. They like a late kickoff. I think it's 9 p.m. kickoff, which is great for me. It makes it a 9 a.m. kickoff here in NZ, and that'll be kind of late enough for you guys in Oz to be getting up with your brekkie and having some rugby to watch as well. Jaco Piper is the ref. Fingers crossed, no dramas in terms of officiating. But anyway, you guys let us know your thoughts. Can you see the Wallabies pulling off an upset and beating this all-conquering French team at home, or do you think the French are just going to be too good? You guys let us know your thoughts, and I'll talk to you guys again soon. See you later.